ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Welcome to this segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation today is Rag Gaudi Mala Mahalla Panjava. Ik Oankar Satgur Prasad Paio Bal Budh Sukh Re Harkh Sog Han Mirt दुख सुख चित समसर गुर मिले रहाओ. जो लो हाउ किछ सोचो चितवों तौ लो दुखन परे. जो कृपाल गुर पूरा पेटिया तौ आनंद सहजे. जेती सियाणप कर्म हाउ किए तेते बंद परे. जो साधु कर मस्तक धरियो तब हम मुक्त भय. चौलो मेरो मेरो करतो तौलो बिख केरे. मन तन बुध अर्पी ठाकुर को तब हम सहज सोए. चौलो पोट उठाई चलियो तौलो डान परे. पोट डार गुर पूरा मिलिया तौ नानक निर्भय. जो लो पोट उठाई चलियो तो लो डान परे. पोट डार गुर पूरा मिलिया तौ नानक निर्भय. The outcome of meeting with the true enlightener or imbibing good wisdom. And how does that happen? The Guru says, Paio Bal Budh Sukh. This is his proclamation. That I awakened to the childlike joy of the self Gur mile, when I received good wisdom. And in that state of mind, when you're awakened to the self which is innocent, without judgment, in that state of mind, he goes on to say, joy and sorrow, hark hasog, loss and death, han mirt, grief and happiness, are all treated alike. They are treated for the impostors that they are. So the joy of awakening to the innocence of one's inner self is achieved through Guru wisdom. So our root misconception stems from identifying ourselves with our ego personalities instead of apprehending that indivisible, pure being that is our true nature. And so the ego personality, Haume that is, gets enmeshed in an illusion of its own making because it views external reality as distinct from itself, whereas it is of the same nature. And this is the spiritual blindness that keeps us trapped in the nexus of karma, so to speak, action, reaction. And that is the source of sorrow or dukh. Gur mile signifies the need for spiritual wisdom, the Guru principle, which is the divine agency to free us from this illusion. When that happens, then all ego-based judgment of opposites, that is to say, of good and bad, joy and sorrow, evaporate. And that is what is meant by Sukh, which is an awakening. This was the Rahau, the central passage. And then the Guru explains the default state in which we all are. He says, Jolo hau kich sochon, Jolo hau kich sochon chittavon, Tolo dukh na pare. So long as my thoughts and memories are colored by Haumeo consciousness, I remain filled with remorse. But when the perfect master melts my ego away, Jo Kripal Guru Pura Petya, then Anand Sahje, I am filled with joy and equipoise. So the self, or just beingness, is really seeing without the lens of our memory and conditioning. Memory and conditioning is what Haume primarily is. Because it is already anticipating things based on its memory. And so it reacts in a way that it is used to. The ego personality always acts out of prior conditioning, whereas the self or self-awareness is that awareness which is prior to becoming something, prior to being dictated by the known. In other words, being equates to living in the present. No judgments. And likewise, Jeti Syanap Karam Hau Kiye Tete Band Pare, the more you act out of ego personality, the more fettered you will become. Because habitual patterns of behavior strengthen the ego personality, and it becomes exceptionally resistant to change then, which means that it fetters, it binds you, and the fetters that bind us are the prevarications of the mind, old habits, cravings, addictions, which are the breeding ground for narcissism. So, jo sadhu kar mastak taryo tab hum mukat bhaye. That is how you are released from the prevarications of the mind, the perversions of the mind, when the perfected enlightener instills good wisdom. And the more I speak out of my ego personality, speech, the more noxious I become. Tao lo bikha kere, because speech can be toxic and obnoxious. But when he says, I submit myself to the master, man tan buddh arpi thakur ko, tab hum sahaj soe. A natural ease spontaneously arises within. So patterns of action and patterns of speech are intimately connected. We construct our reality. We make an abstraction. So we have to transcend this linear speech pattern to the awareness of the self, where there is no language. And so the Guru advises us, he says, look, the more you walk around with the weight of the ego, the bundle of the ego, Jolo port uthai chaleo, you're walking around with the weight of the ego, Tolo daan pare, the more filled with remorse and guilt you will be. Because then you're in this mode of action, reaction, reward, punishment, good, bad. That is what keeps you tossing about. And in conclusion, when Nanak met the perfect good enlightener, in other words, when the Guru principle is grasped, the load of the ego is lightened. Port tar gur mile, gur pura milya, tau Nanak nirbhay, and then you achieve the state of fearlessness. Because ultimately, the ego personality is rooted in fear and wants, desires. On that note, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.